So guys, welcome back to another episode of the Ike MMA podcast, the Ike MMA show, and I'm here with MMA fighter now Niall Wilson, who is due to be stepping into the cage again at the IUR Fighting Championships on June the 4th, and they're going to be fighting what's his name, Conor McCarthy. Conor
Yeah,
McCarthy. So look, man, how are you? How are you feeling?
good. Nice and fresh anyway. It's a lot different from the last one anyway so far. The last one we had 4 weeks notice, so it was a depletion cut straight away.
Yeah, I was
Whereas this
watching that.
time,
Let's go ahead. Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt you.
whereas this one now you're good. This one I've got a bit of a longer time, so we're a wee bit more relaxed mentally coming on towards this for the weight cut, and I can come on a bit bigger as well, so I can eat and enjoy my food.
Yes, absolutely, definitely.
Mm.
Um, I saw that fight with you and I think his name is Fredrick. It's like a Scandinavian name or so.
Yeah, he's Norwegian. I think it's Hoifdot or something. It's pronounced. I'm not too sure, but something along
You
those lines anyway.
watching that fight, you see, well, to me anyway, because I still class myself as a novice, even as a fan of the sport. I still class myself as a novice fan. Um, you seem to be like a really well-rounded fighter. Your ground game was really, really good
Yeah,
because the fight stayed in the ground for a good chunk of the time.
yeah. For me. So I started at a young age. I started in different sports like karate and boxing and things like that. So I've never been a stranger towards stand-up sports, but I was predominantly a grappler. I took a step back from. I began wanting to fight in MMA when I was a young teenager, and then I started finding success in grappling and wrestling and BJJ. So I sort of pursued down that path for a while and just pursued a passion really. And
Mhm.
the way I am now, especially with mixed martial arts and the sport that is now, and with me looking to turn professional within the next year, you have to be well rounded. You have to know at least be proficient, if not have some sort of proficiency on the feet and the wrestling against the cage and on your back and on top. That's the way I see it. Is they have to be sort of plugging every hole that you can, and it's down to problem solving. Then trying to find the areas in which he's weakest in and then attacking them.
No, absolutely. Looking at how you guys are performing in the cage, I always say that, if I in a fighter's shoes competing, I would say that I think ground game is a lot harder than stand up, because stand up you can get away with a kick if it's hard enough, or knock the opponents out, a flying
Yeah.
knee or a strike. But with the
Mhm.
ground game, you've really, really got to be tactical and know what you're doing to come out with a win.
Yeah, definitely. The old saying, "Puncher's chance." There's a reason that there's a saying, a cliche. In any sport, anybody since you're growing up, you don't even have to be from combat sports. If you're fighting in the street or you're a young kid who gets into conflict, then you're out swinging hands. So anybody in the world knows how to throw a punch. Now, obviously, there's a difference between knowing how to throw a punch and then being a top world class striker in any sport. But the point is that everyone's always got a puncher's chance. It's a lot easier to catch someone with a lucky strike than it is someone to go out and out grapple or a world class grappler or go out and jump them levels within grappling.
Um, so I always, if you watch my past episodes,
Yeah.
I always ask the person that I'm interviewing, um, what I know I like to take things back to the beginning. What where did your love for the sport? Where did it start from? How did you get involved in the sport?
Yeah. So mine started again as a young teenager. When UFC used to be on like Bravo TV. This was really like back in the dark days of MMA. It was just starting to come on the light, and it
Yeah.
was well, sort of two ways. I had a big cousin, an older cousin, and he showed me Pride and it was old home videos that he was getting, and it wasn't many, but I remember just seeing. I'm not sure who it could have been, one of the Gracies or it could have been one of the Japanese, but I remember seeing a guy in a gi fighting in a ring, and they were fighting. It wasn't WWE that I grew up watching. It was real fighting, like. And then a couple of years later, sort of around the same time, the two were merging. But me and my friends, used to stay in my friend's house and things like, and just one day flicking through the TV, and it became on. It was UFC, and it happened to be, I think it was Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell, and that was one of the earliest sort of fights that we had seen when Matt Serra and GSP were having their fights, and there was a lot of guys around then, or Matt Hughes, sorry, and even Matt Serra was around, BJ Penn, James Pulver, a lot of those earlier guys, like. And then just as I say, from then on, and I was a bigger kid, I was heavier, and I got bullied a lot at school, with glasses and red hair, and being fat and things like that. So there was a lot of targets. And then I would see a guy like Chuck Liddell going on with a big belly, and he's stolen boy. So my thought was like, if he can do it, then why couldn't I do it? I could go and train and be like someone like him. And then I found the sport again through that older cousin. He agreed to coach me after a while, and then I just sort of fell in love with the grappling aspect of it, and that's when I started to like pursue that. And we went to Brazil and we trained in Brazil, and we were out there training, and we were offered a fight back here in Letterkenny and Derry or in Donegal. So we took the fight, and that started the mixed martial arts side of things again then. And then for a lot of the time in my early 20s, I was bouncing between the two and dealing with injuries. So I'd be competing high level in BJJ, trying to go and compete in like national tournaments and compete even at Europeans and things like that there if I could. And then at the time then I was taking fights whenever I was healthy or when I was training properly for them. And over the last 4 or 5 years now, I've just sort of dedicated solely to in mixed martial arts. I would still jump on the no-gi competitions and things like that. And I will still jump back on the BJJ wearing the gi, and I always wear the gi because it's sort of like a first love, if you will. But the way I am is I want to pursue this as a dream and pursue this pathway as something that I want to do in mixed martial arts,
That's I like that because there's a big story behind where you're coming from,
Yeah.
and I like the fact that you actually traveled all the way to Brazil, which is like let's say the motherland of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I think that probably explains to someone like myself kind of let me say a hint as to why your ground game is so good like it is.
Yeah, so we were there with my old team. We went twice. We went out to Brasilia in the capital, and we trained with a guy called Alessandro Ceruto. And just the exposure to that high level, we were training on the mats. And back in the time in Ireland, you were lucky to have maybe 8 or 9 black belts in the whole of the country. And when we were rolling during the days and the night times, there was at least 10 on the mat every time. So I was a white belt the first time we went out, and 90% of the rolls that I had, the spars that I had out there, were with black belts. And even they sit and watch them boys who go against each other. When you seen 2 black belts going against each other in Ireland, they were usually organised or paid, or they were meeting at a top level of competition. So it was all eyes on it, whereas this was just a common occurrence out there. And then that really shot my game up, and it exposed me to a higher level of training and a higher level of performance. And then by the second time we went out, it was the same thing. You're going out and you're meeting new guys again, and they're even better again. And it's just trying to keep that momentum going, and understanding, as I say, it helps mentally as well. A lot of them guys, you're going out there and you're being put under pressure, and they're really sort of draining sessions, and they're mentally fortifying sessions. But when you come back here, that's where you get the mental strength from. A lot of people they would get taken down and they get put under their back, and in MMA, a lot of people just want to sort of get up or get out of the way and get on top. Whereas I'm happy to fight off my back as well. I know I'm just as dangerous off my back as I am on my feet. I'm not there to like lie there and try and submit you or try and sweep you. I'm there to try and submit you, and I'm constantly throwing stuff up for you to defend, and I'm just not letting you breathe. I'm trying to keep a high pace on the whole time, and that's where that comes from. That Brazilian style of training, that Brazilian style of rolling and sparring.
And I try not to pry too much, but in terms of it's a brutal sport, and as well as you're dishing out the offensive, the attack onto your opponent, even whether you're competing or sparring and training. Of course, unfortunately, you have to take some abuse in return. That's as in family-wise, they've never been concerned about your health, especially about you taking lots of abuse and sustaining injuries to your head. No one's ever talks you out of the sport at all.
To be honest, a lot of at the time, so when I went to university, about 19, 20 years of age, I tried to go to Liverpool. I was going to go to John Moores University, and just a few weeks on, I realised it's just education wasn't for me. So I decided that I was trying to pursue a course in psychology to go into sports psychology, but it just became a thing then that I was missing the training, I was missing my teammates and my team, and just that everyday life of what pursuing a sport and pursuing a real passion, And I talked with my parents, and obviously, they had their concerns. And even to this day, my grandmother, she still always says to me, even though I'm doing well, she still, you should give up that fighting. They never liked it because they're always concerned with safety, but they obviously love to see me doing well. And that's the thing about it. As much as they joke about me giving it up, and it's just concern of safety, they'll always support me. My family are my biggest fans in terms of they're always there to support, and they're always asking me how I'm doing. They're always showing up to fights, and of course, they're always going to have their concerns. To be honest, if I was a parent, mixed martial arts would probably be the last thing I want my child to pursue. But they understand that I'm following a dream, and they understand that I'm trying to, create a path that's never sort of been walked. And as I say, they're fully supportive in that sense. My mother, she comes to all the fights, but even she'll say it. She'll come watch all the fights, but she stands covering her eyes when I'm fighting. Now she's a wee bit more relaxed. Wow. She used to stand and cover and get their friends to cover on in front, but she's okay now. Like she's more comfortable with it now.
She'd rather see just the end results of you winning, but she doesn't want to see what's going on.
She'd rather hear it. She'd rather just hear it and be there for it, Whereas even now, they're more relaxed. My father was the same. He was sort of against it at the start, and more again, they're just worried about safety. No parent wants to see their child get into a cage, and especially when they don't really know the sport themselves.
Yeah.
You're going on as like my first show. There was guys getting knocked out and getting head kicked and things like that before my fight. So obviously, my parents were like, "Jesus, we didn't know it was going to be this brutal, this violent." Like,
yes, yeah.
And then, as I say, that's always the way it is. But they're grand now. They're my biggest fans, and they're the biggest supporters I have.
Obviously, they go to see you fight cage side. They'll be inside the venue.
Yeah.
I did that about a month ago. On behalf of someone else to interview a fighter on behalf of another podcaster. And I have to say that up until that point, that was my first cage side event watching a fight live. Up until that point, I only watched Clan Wars, Cage Warriors, UFC, Bellator, One Championship, and PFL and the other promotions, but I only watched them on TV, on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in watching the show through a screen, basically, and you actually being cage side and watch. There's a massive difference.
Being on that atmosphere is a big difference. You feel the same tension. Everybody's on that wavelength. Everybody's up at height and sort of sense. It's a unique old feeling, like when you're on there. Even being out, like I've had to watch a few teammates and different people in my life that were fighting, and I've said it before. I would rather be the one on the cage dealing with the emotions than be outside the cage having no control over the outcome.
Yeah.
It's hard that way. Like.
So your fight on June 4th, how is how things going? I think you said because we're still in like the middle of April now, and June's some time away. How's the fight going? How's your diet going? How's the training going?
So I had injured my knee there for the last fight, so I've just sort of been rehabbing that and sort of trying to keep it, make sure it doesn't sort of do any more lasting damage. And this week I was able to get back in and begin the real training and dieting and things like that. So it's been all steam ahead full steam ahead since Monday, and for me mentally and physically, and it's just trying to keep the momentum going from where we were from the last fight and trying to keep it rolling through. Obviously the 4 weeks off, we would lose a wee bit of the sharpness that we would have had coming on, but we can get that back within a week or 2 weeks. As I say, I'm doing this since I'm 18, 19, so it's just an hour walk in the park for me in terms of fight camp. It's just an hour thing. The fight, of course, will never be. That's the way they are. People are training when we take their head off, so it's never a walk in the park. But I'm doing my best to make sure it's as easy, as straightforward as I can for the fight. The weight's perfect. I'm trying to get down to 70 kilo. That's the weight I want to fight at. That's lightweight. But I was asked by the promoter, I was contacted, and they offered me a title fight at 75. And obviously I'm going to take a title shot. Like, I want to try and fight the good boys, fight the real tests. And I know Conor's a game opponent. He's got a good load of ones. He's 4-1 there. He's deserving of a title shot himself, so I'm happy to go in there. We'll see what happens. Should be a good fight
now. There's something that I've kind of learned before. I've heard it on more than one occasion, but let me stop asking. When it comes to making weight, so it's a title bout that's going to be taking place in June 4th. So making weight at 70 kg, you having to, I'm assuming you have to cut where you have to lose the extra, as in fat, and you've done that before?
I've never cut down to 70 kilo yet. So right. This was where I was looking. I only have a few, as I say, I'm looking to turn professional in the next next year, couple of fights. So I want to try and I fought at welterweight for 5 fights, and that last fight was at 73. So that was my way of bridging the gap down to lightweight. Whereas this one now, as I say, I wanted to try and get myself matched with another 70 kilo fighter, but Becky, the promoter, offered us a shot at 75. And of course, you're not going to turn down a title fight just to fight for a standard lightweight fight. I can always make the weight down. I would rather go in, as I say, test myself against someone at 75 and then we can look at the lightweight fights later in the future at the 70 kilo mark. I've never done it, but no one be making the 73 kilo mark from where I made it. And once you sort of know your body after a few cuts and a few different diets and hard sessions and hard camps in that sense, then you start to understand that what you can and can't do. And I know I can make the lightweight mark comfortably, and I know I could be coming on a big lightweight. But for this one, I'll do my best to maintain my size and try and come on around the welterweight mark, come on at 75 for the weigh-in, and then be around the 80, 83 mark. That's the plan anyway.
You've never had to cut so much weight that when I've heard some stories that you have to lose so much weight, whether it's fat or water, that to the extent that it looks and it feels quite extreme. I have seen some situations at weigh-ins at the UFC in particular whereby they've made the weights and they're doing the weigh-ins a day or so before the actual fight day, and I've seen some of the females and males, they collapse off the scales because they've lost so much weight. I've heard some situations whereby the fighters lost so much body weight they can hear their brain vibrating slightly in their skull. That was a new one for me. I was shocked when I heard that. I mean, is that something you would do more than once? I mean, because it seems so extreme and even probably fatal for the body.
Yeah, that's the point. Even there, like for that last fight, I cut from whatever happened that I try to do my baths the night before, and we sort of messed the cut a wee bit. It was from my own sort of bad preparation, but whatever way it happened with the baths, I woke up heavier rather than lighter. So I had to cut 8 kilo, which is about 16 pound, maybe 17 pound, and it wasn't to the extreme as you're saying, where I didn't feel any sort of felt drained, obviously because I'm dehydrated and your body only wants to drink the water, and I'm using the different weight and cut methods and things like that. But me and my coach had a talk about it, and I was starting to get to that point where I was like, look, I don't know if I can get much more off here. And I did get the weight off, and he just said to me, so look, the minute you start to feel unhealthy, then just stop. It's not worth it. And for me, the way I look at it is, I've never got to the point where that's mad about hearing their brain and things like that. And I've heard boys saying about that before, but it's never got to that point for me. And if it ever did, I would just go up the weight class. I would rather eat and gain the muscle and be a bigger welterweight, because I've had 5 fights at welterweight anyway. I'm 6'1". I've got the frame to be a welterweight if I just added the muscle. So it's not a case of I'm too small for the division. It's just that I would rather come down and be at my natural weight rather than have to take a year out and bulk up as I'm moving up and things like that. But as I say, if I ever got to a point where it was unhealthy, really unhealthy, then I would just stop. If it's the point of dehydration and smart weight cuts, and if you use the right methods with the right professionals around you, then you'll make the weight in a scientific manner, and you won't have to push them extremes. But what I think happens a lot of the time at the top weights or the top leagues, UFC, PFL, Bellator, is guys are looking for any sort of 1% advantage they can get. And that is, a lot of the case, they're trying to cut that extreme weight just to get down towards the lower weights. And it's just not worth it. I know they're making money, but nobody knows what sort of damage this is doing in the long term. Nobody knows what damage that concussive blow can do. We've seen it with Darren Till when he was down at welterweight. He was getting knocked out by Masvidal. And Masvidal's a blown up lightweight at times. So it's just not worth the concussion blow. And that's the way I would look at it. I would rather be at the peak of my performance, getting under the fight, and being beat, knowing that I gave it my all, rather than coming out and going, I shouldn't have cut the weight. I'm cutting too much, and having to learn that way. Because it's a steep learning curve if you're going to go on there and get knocked out and realise then that you shouldn't be down at that weight class,
Yeah. You touched on the UFC that I would like to ask you something about that a little bit later. Now your opponent, Conor, you guys are almost evenly matched in terms of your record.
Yeah.
What do you make of him? Because I can see your ground game is really, really good, and if someone's ground game, I think is really good, probably as good as their stand up, then I think they've got a big advantage over someone who probably is just good on their feet.
Yeah. For me, firstly, I respect Conor as an opponent. He's a test. That's one of the reasons this fight that attracted me anyway. Was obviously if it hadn't been for a belt, I would have just said, look, I'm looking at a 70 kilo matchup. But I'm interested in the matchup, even as we have a title shot on the line. He's a good fighter. He's dangerous. He's got power. He seems to be a good wrestler and things like that. Obviously, I'll have the advantage and experience on the ground. And to me, as I say, I respect him. This isn't disrespectful, they say, but in my opinion, anyway, I feel I'm too experienced for him across the board. I've been about this sport probably since Conor, before he even knew what it was. and I've been doing this 10, 11 years. And for me, it's a case of everybody's got a chance. And my preparation on this fight now over this next 8, 9 weeks, even if it's 6 or 7 weeks, is to make sure that I minimise his chance of winning, minimise the chance of catching me with a big blow or catching me with a lucky thing. Because as I say, I don't feel that he'll catch me on the ground. He's strong. He's got a couple of ones by TKO on the floor and things like that. And all respect to him, he's got power in his hands. But I've had 5 fights at welterweight. He's had 5 fights around that weight as well. So he's not going to show me nothing that I haven't seen over the last 10 years, I don't think. If he beats me, all power to him. That's why we're in the game. I'm certainly not here for easy fights. Like, I'm here to prove myself and test myself. So if he beats me, all power to him. But it's going to take a good boy to beat me on the night. Like,
that's good. I like what you said there. What you said. In terms of the promotions, you've been in this sport for a long time. I mean,
yeah.
Even though you've not had any professional fights yet, but I mean, speaking with you, talking with you, just this kind of the source of detailed answer you're giving me, and people may bash me for saying this, your team, your gym, they may bash me for saying this, for saying something that's completely incorrect, but I kind of feel like you're a veteran of the sport.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
That's no problem. To be honest, as I say, I've been around this sport my whole adult life. I started training at 16, 17, and I was in a room with grown men. And this is back in the day when there was barely amateur, wasn't really amateur. It was, you were still allowed to needle ahead. Like my second fight, I was allowed to needle ahead. And I've had to go back and regress my rules now. We were allowed to elbow to the body and elbow to the legs. Whereas now in the last couple of fights, I'm having to pay attention to the rules because I'm not allowed to knee. I'm allowed to needle a body, but I'm not allowed to needle a head. I'm not allowed to elbow at all. So there's been a big change, and I've been around for a lot of the sport. I've been around for a lot of sport locally and domestically, and as a fan, I've watched it grow and evolve into a sport in itself, rather than just let's just pitch a taekwondo fighter against a boxer and let's pitch a grappler against this guy and see who goes where. Mm-hmm. It's become a sport in itself. I've watched the evolution of the sport, and I've learned from the evolution of the sport, and I've tried to integrate it into my game, rather than just be a grappler, rather than just go, right, well, I'm high level grappler, I'm just going to keep grappling, I'm going to try and grapple everybody I fight. It's right, you have an advantage in grappling, let's start rounding out the striking. Let's go down, and I'm sparring with, on a weekly basis, I'm sparring with world champions in boxing, kickboxing. I'm sparring with boxing coaches and different boxers that have had over 200 fights. The team that I have now around me, I have champions in kickboxing and boxing as well. There's a lot of high level grapplers in the room, and my teammates, Jordan O'Neill, for example, has 4 belts across 3 weight classes in MMA. Blaine McGill's fighting for titles. We have a lot of more guys. Matthew Fried's fighting for titles every other show. There's a lot of high level guys around me, and there's been a lot of high level guys around me since I'm 18, 19 years of age. So for me, I do feel I'm a veteran of the sport in terms of as a fan and as a competitor and a practitioner. My record might not show it, obviously, because the volume of fights doesn't reflect the amount of time I've been around it. That's due to different reasons of setbacks and different injuries, different things that have happened that I've had to take time out, personal experiences and things. But this sport has always been a part of my life. This sport has always been something I've always been trying to train and always trying to make myself better. So for me, I feel like I'm a veteran. I feel that's what I mean by saying a veteran. I should say that I feel I'm too experienced to a lot of these guys that are coming up through. A lot of these guys may have double the fights that I have, but I've got double the amount of mat time and the amount of times years I've been around this sport in comparison to a lot of them.
So, say when you were fighting professionally, say in the next 5 to 6 years, which of the big promoters would you like to join? I mean, I've asked some fighters this question before, and I'm assuming many people will say, well, the answer is obvious, you want to go to the UFC, but many have actually surprised me and said, no, they'll actually really sit down and give this a good, meticulous think, and then they'd actually make up their minds. But I mean, for you, which of the big names which one of them would you like to join?
Yeah, I think, obviously, as you said, a lot of the people are going to, it's the UFC's, because of the way the UFC is sort of, it's hand in hand with MMA. There's a lot of people, even though the casuals will still say, oh, I watch UFC, but they're watching Bellator, they're watching other ones. They associate that with MMA. So as a child that grew up watching UFC, it would be obviously a dream come true to be able to say I fought in the UFC or I fight in the UFC. But for me, personally, I would take anyone that came knocking first. If Bellator came, I would. The dream for me, the one that I would take, if all three came at the one time and they all came in the match the same hours, I honestly believe that it would take ONE FC. I just love the approach that ONE FC have to the sport, because I grew up a martial artist. Like, I grew up from karate. That's how I sort of learned. Me and my brother grew on from that sport. I have two uncles that are karate black belts, and I came up through BJJ, and they have a lot of that side. I know that the Brazilian approach, obviously, with the dojo storming and things like this here, obviously wasn't about respect and all. But there is that Budo lifestyle. There is that respect for your opponent when you step onto the mat. And that's why I always bow to my opponents after fights. And regardless of what sport I'm doing, I feel I'm a martial artist before I'm a fighter. I'm here to fight, but I carry myself day to day as a martial artist. I'm trying to make myself better in sort of every facet of life. And I think ONE FC, they do their best. They promote that sort of approach to fighting. I know there's a lot of fighters like Rotang and guys that are a bit loudmouth in the cage where they're taunting. There's a lot of showmanship. There's never really any malice or hostility, and there's not a lot of guys. There isn't that McGregor approach, and that's what it's. I love the UFC. I love watching the big show. I love watching the guys that are fighting on it now, even like the young fighters like Ian Gary and different guys that are coming up through it. It's great to see, but Ian's doing his own thing in personality. Paddy Pimblett's doing his own thing in personality, and I think that's what's attracting people to them. They're not following that McGregor model. When Conor got into the sport, Conor was genuinely. I've been around the sport a long time, and we used to be on old message boards before we had social media. And Conor McGregor used to be a loudmouth on them. He was on taunting boys on them, and he was talking fights on them, and that's just who Conor is. But what happened then is a lot of people seen that as like, oh well, that's the way you make money in MMA. Like Colby changed his whole persona. Colby became that villain. He became that heel, and for me, that doesn't attract me to be martial arts. If a guy wants to go and he wants to start loudmouthing, we can go all day, we can have them verbal wars, but regardless of whether you like it or not, it's your hands and your feet that do the talking when you get under that cage. It's your abilities that do the talking. So I would rather go to ONE FC and have that martial arts approach and be appreciated by fans for a martial artist before being appreciated as a fighter. Looking at it like the old saying of like, rather than just being a piece of meat, rather than the gladiator that's being pushed out to die for the Coliseum. As much as that is the epitome of what MMA is, it's modern day gladiatorism. I would see ONE FC as the pinnacle of mixed martial arts for mixed martial arts.
I agree with everything you just said there. And you're right about one. Is it ONE Championship or ONE FC? But it's the same. It's the same.
It's like one fighting championship, but I know what you mean when you say ONE Championship or ONE FC. It's the same sort of thing, like.
And you're right, because over there I can see it's purely. I mean, everything to do there's purely to do with that they put the sport first. But I can see that over here in the UK and Ireland, especially in the US, the UFC, it's heavily commercialized. You've got the fights, same with all the sponsorships, the ad deals, the ring girls, and just more glamorizing to the sport for the added money and the extra bonus. When you say that you're not the sort of person that's, let's say, like a Conor McGregor or someone who runs their mouth to hype up the fight, to put more eyes and more attention on the event, I mean, you wouldn't like to do that. So because once you've done that, you do add more attention. And so if you do win, or whatever the outcome is, you do get a good payout to compensate for all whatever it is the work you put into preparing for the fights.
For me, like amongst my friends and stuff like that, my friends will say I'm a loudmouth. I always joke and be the joker of the group. We always have banter and always slag each other and different things. But in terms of fighting, I don't need to. I don't need to have any sort of extra fuel to fight you or need to motivate myself through my words. It's the minute I get matchy. That's the way I've always approached it anyway, and I always have respect for my opponents. I'll always be respectful in the words I say, up until they disrespect me. Then it's all no holds barred. But the way I look at it is the minute I'm matched with you is I hate you anyway. And personally, and I don't need to say that to them, but they're the reason that I can't eat the food that I want to eat. They're the reason that I can't take a night off training because I'm sore or injured, or they're the reason I have to push through injuries. They're the reason I have to do this. And I find all these reasons they hate them anyway. So I don't need to turn around then and make it a personal battle where I'm starting to attack you. I'm starting to, get under your head or play mind games. I don't need mind games. It's a physical game. If you're looking for that mental age, I feel there's a bit of insecurity in it. Again, if that's naturally who you are, again, like Conor, as I say, I've watched him do it for years. It's just the way he is. But Conor was a master of it. Conor was a master of it because he backed it up and he wanted to back it up. The way I look at it again is, if I'm sitting now and somebody pops up and they want to start talking, they want to keep talking back and forth, and especially in a public forum, I'm obviously going to reply. I'm obviously going to try and do my best then to be like, right, well, if you want to do this, then the gloves are off. We can talk. And if you want to talk, then I'm one of the best talkers about. But for me, I'd rather be known as a better fighter and a martial artist. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to leave a legacy as well. And
yeah,
the last thing I want to do is set an example of, right, well, you have to be a loudmouth to be a fighter. Especially, you see it a lot of the times now at the younger levels, the lower levels of MMA, especially those last couple of years. When Conor was doing what he was doing, there was a lot of guys coming through and they're posting on Facebook and posting on Instagram, oh, I'm the best there is, and I'm fucking this and I'm that. It's like, man, chill out, you've had 2 fights. Just relax yourself and do what you have to do. Get your fight done. Don't need to talk. All these boys been, this belt is mine and I'm coming for that belt, and it's like, man, it's an amateur show. Relax yourself. And that's the way I look at it myself. Again, if boys want to make it personal, I can talk with you, no bother. I'm there to talk if you want to talk that way. But in terms of having respect for my opponents, that's the way I've always been brought up, and that's the way I've always learned through the sport. My example was have respect for your opponents, because again, bottom line, without your opponent, you wouldn't have a fight. And without your sparring partners, you don't have training. Without the guy standing across the cage, then you don't have a chance to make your legacy. So I don't have a reason. I don't have a want or a need to attack you personally. As I say, if they want to talk, then we can talk. Like,
see, someone like yourself, after having this conversation with and listening to how you speak, what you say, you're a very rare sort of breed in the sport. Yeah, you keep the brutality in the cage. Once it's over, whether you win, whether you lose, it's done. You move on. You don't have to keep name calling and talking, and so too much bullshitting, if you know what I mean.
No, that's not that. The way I look at it is like, if I was standing in a bar, if I was walking down the street, then if somebody starts talking shit to me, then he knows what he wants. That's hostility. That's genuine hostility. So I'm not going to let that go just because I've had a fight with him, or we've thrown a few punches. So that's the way I would be in the cage. If you want to talk shit before a fight, then I'm going to do my best to take your head off, and then after a fight, I'm going to talk shit about how I took your head off because you were running your mouth. It would just, to me, it would just light a fire under me if somebody had done that. It would just give me another reason to go on and try and brutalize you as much as I can. My aim is to go on and finish fights. My aim, I always come on with a saying that I'm either coming out in my shield or I'm coming out with it. And it's that old Spartan saying, I'm dying on there if I need to, and it's about finishing the fight. Yeah. I go on to finish the fight or be finished. So if you want to add that extra fuel to the fire of, right, well, I have to go on now, and I have an even bigger reason to go out and take this boy's head off or punch this boy's head under the ground, and that's the last thing you want to do. It's already a hard enough fight for most amateurs to fight me. Never mind someone that's going to give me that extra motivation of running their mouth.
Good, I love that. One last point, question I'd like to ask you, because I know you said you are going to go to the gym to train later on. Jake Paul and Logan Paul, and people will bash me for asking this question, but especially Jake Paul. Let me start by asking: do you take them seriously, especially Jake Paul?
I'd say as a boxer, again, whether people like it or not, he's been training. And I would say he's been training just as hard as a lot of professionals have over the last couple of years. Jake Paul's in a very advantageous position where he has the money to go out and afford that lifestyle where he can. That's the thing about money these days with YouTubers, is they're able to just click their fingers, I want to be a boxer. I'm going to take the next year and I'll be financially stable regardless of what happens. And I can go train twice a day in the gym. I can get the best trainers in America. I can get the best physicians, best nutritionists, and have become at some level of professional boxing. Now, whether or not they reach the top, whether or not they reach the levels that they believe that they can, that's another thing. But what I will say is, a lot of these people that talk to them, a lot of these people that disrespect them, are 90% of these people have never made that walk themselves. 90% of the people that talk that talk don't even wouldn't even step onto a gym, wouldn't even make the move from the sofa to the gym rather than the gym into the ring. And that's what I would always say is, I'll meet people all the time. I work the door as a bouncer, and a lot of guys, even my friends and stuff, a lot of my friends are respectful because they've been around the sport themselves a lot of the time. But there is a few people that I know that would stand and go, oh, well, he's this and he's that and he's a poser. And it's like, man, whether you like it or not, he's in the gym putting on the work, and for boxing, they're putting on the work. I honestly believe, and Josh or Anthony Smith said this, is whoever they fight in mixed martial arts, I do think they get smoked. I just don't think they have the all-round game. Now, they're picking their...
Okay, so you were saying about Jake Paul and Logan Paul, despite what people may think of them, they're in the gym, putting in the work, and they're putting in the work, and I suppose it's having some results, maybe not necessarily the results that they want or other people want.
No, it's that. As you said, within boxing, they're doing what they can do. I know the two of them have their what do you say? They have backgrounds in wrestling, and I'm nearly sure it's in the state of Ohio. And Ohio is a really, really high level state for wrestling. If you're coming out of Ohio as a wrestler, then it's a really good place to be. So maybe they could make waves within MMA, but I just feel that boxing's a lot more. It's a lot more straightforward for them. If you dedicate a year to becoming a boxer, and as I say, when they have the money that they do, where they're able to hire the top coaches and just train all day, every day, top nutritionists, get everything sort of made around them, they love that pro lifestyle, then you can understand why you can see the improvements within Jake's game and Logan's game. Even fair play them. Like, I know obviously Mayweather's nowhere near what he was, and he wasn't going anywhere near him, but Logan Paul shared a ring with Floyd Mayweather. There's not many men in the world can say they've done that. Jake Paul knocked out Tyron Woodley. Now, whether or not people think it's a dive, he still knocked out Tyron Woodley. And again, there's not many people in the world. There's not even many people in mixed martial arts, the top level of mixed martial arts, can say that they knocked out Tyron Woodley. So you have to give him that ounce of respect. Personally, I don't like them because obviously I come from the background of having to put your nose to the grindstone and
exactly
have to do your work. But again, as a martial artist, I have to respect the fact that one, they're doing the work in the gym, and two, they're getting into the ring. Something a lot of people, 99% of the people in the world don't really do, is step up, and you can sort of, I have to respect them in that sense.
Right. Well, you the answer you just said there about you don't particularly like them as individuals because they haven't necessarily put the work in to at least build up their name value, to build up their brand in the same in terms of combat sports.
Yeah, they haven't gone through the normal modes. A lot of these guys, they get to pro boxing, for example. There's pro boxers in the town that I'm from that I know. Guys are fighting on Commonwealth Games. Guys are fighting, fighting in the back fucking hole of nowhere. Fighting nobodies, and even when they turn professional, they're having to take 8, 9, 10 fights against guys that journeymen, for example, before their name's even out there. Whereas these guys can click their finger and they can draw millions of eyes and draw millions of points in pay-per-view, comparing to, as I say, normal fighters, not even normal fighters, good professional fighters that have been out busting their ass for the last 10, 15 years, boys that have dedicated their life. They get even an ounce of what them guys have, You
see, that's the problem that I have. That's really just the only problem I've got. I mean, yeah, there's the way that they are, especially Jake Paul. And, I can't stand whereby, like the point you're making earlier, those who talk a lot, who run their mouths so much, that's what he's known for, what they're known for. And that's what I can't stand. It brings much attention to any event they're going to be involved in, particularly in boxing. And what I can't stand is that they're going to get all of that reward, money and exposure, and you haven't really done the work like the other names, Canelo, Fury, and, you haven't done the brutal. You haven't put your nose to the ground. You haven't really put the work and you haven't put the blood and sweat and tears in like everybody else has. It just seems so unfair and annoying.
Oh, that's definitely. I don't think they could do the same if they came to mixed martial arts. I think if they came to mixed martial arts, if they fought anybody sort of season within this, for example, if Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley fight in mixed martial arts, I think although Tyron Woodley dropped off towards the end of his career, I think it's a completely different fight. Once you add in kicks, once you add on that wrestling, all the variables of mixed martial arts, even within a cage, becomes a different sport. I heard Anthony Smith talking about the fact that if it's within boxing, Jake Paul stands a lot better chance against Conor McGregor than he does in mixed martial arts, because if Conor gets the kick, it will completely kick the shit out of Jake Paul. It doesn't even need to be grappling, and Jake Paul may think he's a wrestler, but Conor again. It's not like Conor's not been wrestling for the last fucking 10 years. Like he's been doing wrestling and grappling. He's a brown belt in BJJ. So in terms of mixed martial arts, a lot of these guys in the sport that they're in now, mixed martial arts, its own sport. You know, it's not a case of you can become a boxer and then go into one or the other. Guys like Usman and stuff trying to talk under that Canelo fight. It's obvious to see it's for money. You know, even at our levels, you know, I wouldn't turn around now and try and challenge a boxer on the domestic scene in a boxing match. He knows the game. He knows the ring. He knows how to the point system. He knows how to score. You know, that's the way you need to look at it. Never mind when you get to the pinnacle of sport. Do you believe that I could knock one of them out? Obviously, I do, because that's me as having self-belief as a fighter. But again, a boxer's going to believe that he's going to wipe the fucking mat with me. And then if it's mixed martial arts, then it's no question. Mixed martial arts, its own sport. Like.
No, it has been a pleasure speaking with you, and I've actually learned so much more just by conversating with you.
Yeah.
Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to? Friends, family, sponsors, your gym?
Well, obviously friends and family, and then my girlfriend and my gym as well, Combat. We have a lot of good guys coming through. Expect a big year for a lot of guys. And then obviously the old sponsors from the last fight again, you know, Mark Official, who made the t-shirts, Fitness Factory, Rosemount, the gym. We have Bentley Bar, Jordan Cochran, his sports massage therapy, Decky's Barbers. We have another few as well. I'm trying to think Grande's Coffee Truck, and I think there's one more as well, probably missing. But again, thanks to all my sponsors and everybody that supports me. Hopefully, again, we get more support this time, and this is a big fight in terms of prestige. We can win a belt and things. So I'm here to represent, and I'm here to make a bit of noise anyway.
Sure. I'll leave the links to all those brands and names in the description section below for YouTube, and also on Instagram for when I'm promoting this on my social media as well.
Perfect, yeah.
Sure.
Thank
you so much for coming on. So definitely looking forward to seeing you stepping into the cage on June the 4th, and definitely I'm sure I'll be having you back on the show at some point.
100%. Thanks very much, Ike.
Thank you.
All right, pleasure, man.
Take care.